What is up, my Squirtleites? It is I, your king, welcoming you back to Let's Play Destiny. So, you're probably going to notice something. My level's a little bit different. On top of that, I'm running Sunsinger subclass, and it's already leveled up a bit. Well, funny story, actually. So, the next 3 videos you're about to see, or the next 3 missions we're going to record, I already did them, and then computer decided to lose all of the footage for it, so we're going to be replaying through them again, and I'm going to be a little bit higher level, but it is kind of irrelevant because the quest line that we're jumping into next, actually it doesn't really matter what my level is because I'm already super over leveled for it anyway. However, I didn't want to do this before we jumped into the Venus missions because of I really did want to get the Venus missions over with as quickly as possible before we jumped into these, and I wanted to use this quest as a means of upgrading my Sunsinger subclass before we jumped into the Mars missions with it. So, we're going to be starting a new quest which is called The Dark Below. Now, the first mission that we need to do is this one right here, the Sword of Crota. Dark Below questline completely revolves around Crota and his minions and stuff like that. So we're going to be talking all about them in the coming videos. And this is going to be the object of today's video, is the Sword of Crota. So, let's just jump right on in.
I've been combing the Cryptarch's records for anything on the Temple of Crota. Listen.
Long ago, the moon fell to Crota. He wielded a sword so dark it drained whatever light it touched. Now Crota sleeps, but the sword does not. The warlocks believe the sword is in a chamber guarded by the swarm princes. If you face them and steal the sword, we can see that it is never wielded again.
And so we begin.
The only way to destroy the sword is to kill its makers, the sworn princes. One of them is said to guard a ritual site near the Hellmouth. We'll challenge him first.
Alright, let's head on over there. So, I don't want to say too much about Crota yet, nor about this storyline too much yet, but what I do want to say is that The Dark Below was the very first DLC that came with Destiny 1. It came just a few months into the first year of Destiny, and was supposed to be post-vanilla content DLC. However, with the beginning of the Taken King and the rebalancing and the reorganization of the story, it became a much earlier mission, or I guess a much earlier point in the storyline, especially with the raid becoming irrelevant at the time, and also because they wanted newcomers to kind of learn the story of Crota before they got into the story of Oryx. Pretty early on. Now, there are some things in this quest that in this DLC that we are not going to get to fully experience, unfortunately. And one of the big things is, that was a terrible shot. One of the big things is the Murmur quest. In year 1, there was a fusion rifle that you could obtain in the Dark Below known as Murmur. It was a very interesting fusion rifle because it actually had 2 elements to it. It had solar and arc to it, and you could swap between the 2. However, swapping between the 2 kind of made it a bit of a different archetype of weapon. The arc version was much more of a faster charge rate weapon, and the solar version was much more of a hard hitter. It was a very strong weapon when it came out, and there was a very specific quest line you had to do to earn it, which also involved a unique story mission known as the Urn of Sacrifice. I am going to try to record the Urn of Sacrifice quest at least at some point, probably actually at the end of this entire Let's Play, because there is one way to access it nowadays, which is whenever the moon and the earth for a week get a sequence of story missions, it is possible for it to pop up in those story missions. You can play it that way, and it is its own unique mission. It's actually decently long too. It's actually similar to the Chamber of Night mission. However, the sequence that happens in the Chamber of Night, the final room, is very, very different. So I might get to show that when this Let's Play is over, but for now we're not really going to worry about that, and we're also not going to be worrying about getting Murmur because I think you still technically can, but I'm not really going to try. In fact, I actually think you get it just from completing this quest, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe we'll get it anyway. I don't actually remember. But it is a year 1 weapon, so it cannot go beyond 170 light. It can't, so it is kind of trapped down there in the bowels of year 1, unfortunately. So we might get a little use out of it after completing this quest line, but probably not a whole ton, which is a bit unfortunate, but it is a cool weapon, and I would like to show it off. Excuse me, sir, I need you to die. Thank you. Alright, so let's talk about the Sunsinger subclass for a little bit. So the Sunsinger subclass is a completely ability-focused class. And what I mean by that is it literally has a super that amplifies its abilities. So as you can see, my grenade charge rate is coming out. It's very quick. My melee charge rate is actually charging very quick too, although not near to the amplitude that my grenades are recharging, unfortunately. But it almost does guarantee you do get your melee back in the time that you're using the super. Also, your damage is decreased, and it also has other properties beyond that once you go further up the skill tree. Yes, it is actually, in year 1, if there was ever such thing as a tanking subclass, it would actually probably be the closest thing to it, next to the Defender Titan. As far as Warlocks go, it is quite tanky, honestly. Just because it also had a perk called Radiant Skin that one could unlock that would very much decrease the amount of damage that you would take while your super was active. And on top of that, it could self-revive, which is pretty darn cool. But anyways, let's talk about this sword for a second. So this sword is actually important to this quest line.
Its power is dark.
It is dark, but it's very, very powerful. So there are a few methods of using this sword. You hit the bumper for a basic swing, which you can combo 3 times. You can also accentuate that combo by doing bumper, bumper, and then trigger to get a very powerful 3rd swing, which will do a lot more damage. And I actually want to slam because that does an AoE effect. And that is just with trigger. And then once you've killed enough enemies and your super's charged up, which it charges up very quickly, you get a super ability that does that. It hits the ground and then also sends a shockwave forward. Not to mention, the sword is also a mobility tactic, actually. And by that, I'm going to show you right here. I can actually basically jump across this entire room just by using the sword, which is kind of broken, actually, when you think about it. So let's quickly do that. Just be careful of all of the enemies here. Whoop. There we go. It's actually very easy to finish this mission. It's really hard to die even when you're at level in this mission, just because the sword is so powerful. Even if you do get into a situation where you're taking a lot of damage due to the Swarm Princes, it's very easy to escape with this sword. So, 2, 3. Wait, no, that's not what I meant to do. 2, and then slam. Let's get rid of those. Escape for a second. And see, it actually takes him a minute to catch up. 1, 2, 3, 1. There we go. I'm going to save the super for the next Swarm Prince. Yeah, very easy to escape. This is basically just a, hey, here's the sword, have fun with it, because you are going to need how to use it properly at a later point in the game. And that point is actually known as the, well, it is the raid, as a matter of fact. Now, swords were actually brought into the game as a weapon type in year 2, and we're going to talk about those later, and of course unlock some. They do not behave in the same way that this sword does. You can't just kind of swing them willy-nilly, and their combos do not act at all the same. In fact, each sword, beyond the legendary variants, is actually kind of unique. And unfortunately, I will not be able to show the exotic variants because, well, I'm going to be frank. I have basically unlocked every single weapon in this entire game, except for the exotic swords. I never actually took the time to go after those at any one point, so those are pretty much the only exotic I'm lacking, aside from a couple the later raid exotics.
They say that was one of the most powerful weapons the Hive ever wielded against us. Cryptarchs won't believe this.
Indeed they won't, but we did it anyway. Alright, so that is just a taste. Now, the next mission is going to begin the Dark Below proper. The Sword of Crota was actually a part of the vanilla storyline, believe it or not. It was not part of the Dark Below DLC. The next mission that we're going to do, however, is, and it's also going to begin our little relationship with Eris Morn. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so very much for watching this episode of Let's Play Destiny. I hope you all enjoyed it very, very much, and I will see you all in the next one.